Hey there, welcome to episode 117 of the FFS Talk audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo, as usual. We're recording this at 9:19 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here in Greater Vegas on this Thursday, February 19th, 2026. We usually publish these episodes on Thursdays, hopefully in the morning. I think we can do it. Today's title and topic, AI Hype, Part 1. If you are not familiar with the FFS Talk audio program, the idea eventually is to accept opposing viewpoints, if you like, to engage in debate, discussion, argument, maybe just conversation about a particular topic, what works, what doesn't, and what we might do about it. Some people might agree on what works or might disagree on what doesn't work, etc. Paths to solutions, paths to mitigations may also be the source of disagreement, or certainly may benefit from multiple viewpoints and conversation. So that's the idea. Now, up to, we're on episode 117. As yet, there has been no opposing viewpoint. How about that? No opposition. Partially because I really don't reach out for guests, partially because it is extremely difficult to engage people in the Greater Vegas area regarding being a guest in an audio program such as this, and partially because there's so much going on that it's easier for the moment to plant seeds of future discussion. I could go through all of the previous episodes. I don't think anything is particularly timely. That is, for the most part, the seeds thus planted and previously planted in general are, we could say, evergreen topics. They will continue to be conversation worthy for quite some time. So at some point, we'll get some more reach. Well, we will engage more people who might have a viewpoint that they want to express. They may do it on their own, or we might continue on a particular topic previously discussed for something new. So we'll see. If you're not familiar with the FFS abbreviation, it's something you will hear frequently in Ireland, for example, and elsewhere if you're around Irish people. If you have never heard the expression that goes along with that abbreviation, you maybe should consider hanging out with more Irish people, or do what I did and go to Dublin more. The one in Ireland, not the one in California. So on that note, hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, which include a summary of one sentence, which I'll read you. Today's episode has the two standard normal audio program links, and then three episode links on today's topic. Again, AI Hype, Part 1. Why Part 1? Because surely there will be other instances and other examples and so on. This one actually just struck me as galling almost, but so obvious, so worthy of a quick discussion around what we will almost certainly come to expect in the near term with regard to AI hype, artificial intelligence hype, to be clear. So let's get started with this summary of today's episode. Artificial intelligence is going to take all jobs in 18 months, leaving you more time to relax and enjoy life for as long as you have money saved up. The hype around AI coders is pure chaos. Now I'm just going by what I've heard, not on reality. And in particular, my profession, software engineering, has been under continuous assault by all purveyors of AI models and AI technology. Software engineering is an unnecessary job function. Moving forward, there's no reason to pursue anything having to do with software engineering. Don't become a coder. Give up on that. Remember when it was just learn to code? Now, don't even bother. In fact, run away. Have our tools do it for you. This message brought to you by insert your favorite AI tools model technology company. The links for today's, that was not part of the summary. That was my editorial post summary. The links for today's episode, as I mentioned, the first two are the usuals, ffstalk.com, the FFS Talk homepage. Eventually it will look nicer. It's the primary point of publication. All episodes will be linked from there when I get to that. That's a longer story. If you want to learn more, go to the profile page linking everything, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. There you will find the posts section, which contains the Buy Me an Update audio program. It's published there first and then makes its way through Spotify, Amazon, Apple, YouTube. There's an RSS feed. There I make sort of general announcements that are relevant to all of my audio productions and some other projects I'm working on. I will simply say that the website is always on the to-do list, and it always will be. That's how the internet works. You see what I did there? The episode links. Anthropic Claude makes a C compiler. That's the headline for an Anthropic article or blog entry about a recent announcement. It was earlier in February. They used their agentic tools and all this other silliness to create a fundamental tool in the toolbox for software engineering, software development, coding around the C programming language. C has been around for a very long time. It's one of the fundamentals. Some people would say, don't even try to program in C anymore. But just like COBOL, just like so many other things, there is a lot of stuff already existing. It'd be like saying, stop using the English language. But we have a lot of stuff that's written in English. Nate B. Jones is very excited about this announcement. I have a link to his YouTube episode where at the beginning of the episode, the entire episode is about 30 minutes. He talks about a lot of things. So in the first section, like right out the gate, so if you want to listen in on just a couple of minutes of it, you'll get the idea. He is a big fan. He is a big fan of what the future holds in the way of AI tools and programmers doing less of what they've been doing and so on. At the other end, the Primogen, he's a former Netflix programmer. He's been around for a while. He's not very old, so he's not like a long gray neckbeard character, but he's been around for a while. He's got some interesting insights, and he's been very public about his coding and his background, and he does a lot of live interactive stuff, commentary on the state of affairs in that field, programming, and so on. He is skeptical of this announcement. He has a really good 8-minute video looking at what the announcement says and then what the actual details are. Maybe they're not quite, let's just say that Nate and the Primogen are indeed on different ends of the spectrum. I'm going to make statements that are sort of referential, but they don't depend on you having viewed those videos or consumed what their comments are. But if you happen to, you can say, oh, okay, that's what you're talking about. But in general, I'm commenting on what they had to say. And I will say right up front, I tend to side with the Prime on this one. I'm a little bit more skeptical. I think we're just over 3 years into OpenAI releasing their first ChatGPT tools. It's November 2022. And so 3 years, that's a very quick descent into, okay, humans don't have to do stuff anymore. But Nate is very excited about that possibility by all indications. Not to get rid of humans, but whatever you thought you were doing before, you're not going to be doing it in the future. I don't know if I believe that. All that said, the hype is real. As we get started with today's episode, we are going to ponder the hype around AI, not the AI itself. And this is the first pass at this, hence part 1. I don't know if there will be part 10, but it's certainly part 1. There will be more hype. The Gartner hype curve almost certainly applies here as well as it does anywhere else. And AI has become so important and volatile a part of the U.S. economy at the moment that hype is a requirement. Excitement and potential, got to have both, got to keep the investment interest and then the money associated with that flowing. You may or may not agree, but making note of, taking a look at the hype cycle, or perhaps hype cycles, plural, is an essential component of understanding our current state, the world and the markets and whatnot, and how some eventual utility may come out of all of this, or maybe not. I would say there's already utility from even the basic uses of AI tools. I will say, as I often do, I have nothing to hide here. I do not have a strong graphic illustrator capability. I'm not an artist. I don't have the skill set and background to construct appealing and interesting cover art images. So like 90% of my interaction with AI tools so far is around creating square images of something interesting or funny or relevant to audio programs. And occasionally LinkedIn posts, and hopefully you know my opinion about LinkedIn. Some artwork for websites, but I really tend to go more towards composite SVG images, scalable vector graphics for some of that stuff. So anyway, I do use AI, but mostly for generating sort of passive, like I don't consider cover art for an audio program to be a major technological advance. Though I do acknowledge that AI tools have been built on the backs of human creators, whether writing code or books or creating images or videos. So it's not necessarily fair, and that will only get worse into the near term. You may or may not agree, but making note of, taking a look at the hype cycle is perhaps the plural is essential. For myself, I find AI to be a tool, especially in its current form using LLMs, large language models, but we are maybe at the end of or near the end of the beginning. So it's important to take note of these things, and these hype cycles will continue, but it's also important to know where we are in any particular hype cycle, or at least take a guess. Compute power has reached a level where experimentation is completely viable on huge data sets. You'll continue to hear about memory shortages and disk and solid state disk or even spinning hard disk shortages. More and more data needs to be stored, more and more context window size increases, more and more parallel agents working together collaboratively to develop things and so on. These are resource hungry endeavors. And so you want to build a computer at home or even buy one? That or a house. And there are huge data sets that have been available in recent years for this training to take place to make these models function so that continued experimentation and development can continue at ever more quickly pace, at an ever more quick pace. How about that? Or there were huge data sets anyway. Allegedly, the entire internet has been exhausted in the acquisition of training data, and that is ideas generated by humans that have been used to train these models. And training a model is tuning the weights for the large language models and so on. It's worth looking into if you have not explored that. So that's not a term of art that people use and you just say, I don't know what that is. It's not too complicated. It's worth looking into. But already there is some concern by researchers that large language models are the wrong way to proceed, if proceeding is the right word. Others believe artificial general intelligence, AGI, is already on the horizon, on the existing path. And here I would posit that the people that are making such strong claims about the proximity, the current state of the art is to artificial general intelligence, those people have a vested interest, especially in continued investment, access to funding for their continued development efforts. So maintaining that particular part of a hype cycle, possibly essential for their continued business existence even. So all this continues to unfold. So again, to restate it, I think a third time, you may or may not agree, but making note of, taking a look at the hype cycle, or perhaps hype cycles, is essential. This hype instance. So we haven't gotten to the core part of the format. So this is introductory material. This hype instance that we're talking about today, it's an example, but it's a good one and it's very current. 2 weeks ago or so, 10 days ago, I think it is. Something like that, 10, 14 days, this all kind of unfolded as an announcement. And it's not the end of the world nor the beginning, but it got a lot of attention. Anthropic is one of the well-known players in this space. They have a tool called Claude. Some people pronounce that Clow. Some people pronounce it Cloud, C-L-A-U-D. They used it to create a compiler for the C programming language. If this is not your thing, they used Claude, however you want to pronounce that, to write computer code. So they had Claude write the code that performs the translation of a computer program written in the C programming language into the code your computer actually executes. This is sometimes called machine code or binary or an executable. So you need to have these tools, the compiler that says, oh, here's the code you have written. We're going to convert that into an executable thing that you can then double click on or run from a command line, and it will actually perform tasks using your computer's microprocessor and GPUs and all that stuff. So the C programming language, it's a little bit terse compared to like normal human language, but it's been around forever. So having a C compiler that was developed from scratch, put a pin in that, is an exciting development because the C language compiler itself is not ridiculous, but it's a complicated piece of code. But the fact that it would work well enough without human intervention to build a Linux kernel, which makes intense use of C compiler features and functionality, would be an accomplishment. The Anthropic article that I linked in the link section mentioned some impressive outcomes using their home-built compiler, a compiler allegedly built from scratch, building some fairly complex software using the tool, including the Linux kernel, but other well-known things like SQLite and so on. If true, this would be a major accomplishment, if true. And when I say if true, let's say if exactly as they have described it, or close. We're not saying lies. We're saying like, maybe they're overly enthusiastic. Nate Jones, one of the other links in the link section, Nate Jones is extremely AI positive and speaks of grand changes to the way people in my field, maybe yours, software development, will fundamentally change the way they do things, or we do things, or rather guide the way their AI tools do things for them. Nate is extremely enthusiastic about the progress AI tools and their driving companies are making. Can you hear that emergency vehicle? Production by a street. It happens. This is fundamentally changing the way we do things. Nate is extremely enthusiastic about the progress AI tools are making in general, and often points out via his various media efforts. He creates YouTube videos and he publishes his commentary on LinkedIn. There may be other places. And the video and the written word both may or may not be AI generated in whole or in part. No idea. He looks like a human moving around, but he could be an avatar that is AI generated. I don't know if he writes his own scripts. Who knows? The rapid progress and the endless possibilities, and again, massive change on the horizon. Those are his favorite topics. He goes on at length, and I have noted elsewhere that it's a lot of interlocking words. You could toss them in a salad, perhaps. He starts out in the linked video commenting on this C compiler achievement right up front with substantial enthusiasm. So you can just listen to a couple of minutes of it. You don't have to go, but you could also go for the whole thing. He's been similarly excited by AI agents building new web browsers and how complicated a piece of software a web browser is. And that's true. I will say I did work at Netscape back in the Netscape communicator days. That was Netscape version 4. So I have some familiarity hands-on with this. And yes, it is a complicated undertaking. He's very excited about that. It would be cool if he also pointed out that it didn't really work very well at all. But he kind of leaves that part out. It's a matter of what things are exciting and worth talking about, I suppose. Now, the Primeagen, the other link in my triumvirate of links, the Primeagen is a former Netflix software engineer, hands-on experience with a variety of technologies. He actually will explore programming languages by using them to learn them and so on. That's one of the best ways to learn these things, is to use them. He used and developed a variety of technologies in the role at at Netflix. I was at Netscape. He was at Netflix. And as a technology pundit of sorts, he does live coding on Twitch and he comments and so on. He's a sometimes skeptic. He's an opinionated person. He will comment, although he has changed his mind now and then. I think he's fairly open-minded and is excited by coding. I would say he probably is a little bit reticent about one of his favorite pastimes is just going away because of some AI tools. And he has what I would call the opposite take on the Anthropic announcement. I would say that's a pretty good assessment if you do listen or watch the YouTube video. He points out a few interesting, even critical facts to be aware of around this announcement and alleged achievement, including the fact that the compiler does not really function as well as described, similar to the web browser example, which is not included in any of these videos. That's a completely separate thing, but you can look around for that. Nate commented on it probably a month before. And I think the Primeagen also commented on, he tends to pick up topics that are tossed over to him I think he has a Reddit interface that he takes suggestions for new topics and breaking news and so on. So the compiler does not really function as well as described. Claiming the compiler tool was developed from scratch is not really honest, as he points out, since among the things that the massive training sets for all of these AI models includes is the source code for GCC, the GNU compiler collection, which is decades of work across by many humans, by the way, across many capabilities and essential components, among them the tools to build the Linux kernel, which the Anthropic tools cannot actually do despite the claims in the article. End of the day, as Prime points out, the multi-agent process is the achievement. The claims about capability, not so much. So the fact that they got these agents to coordinate on a collaborative development effort and that there was some outcome that was sort of coherent is the achievement. Making claims that it can do a lot more than it actually can is perhaps overly optimistic. So with this in mind, around this particular example, what works with AI hype? Hype is an important thing sometimes. Software development is not necessarily exciting. The casual user of AI tools may or may not be building compilers or other complications, but maybe they're just sending out emails or something or responding to them. But many people are at least vaguely familiar with the Linux kernel. They've heard of it, perhaps. And certainly those in the investor class, those tracking technology trends, will grasp the value of these accomplishments, or they will at least take note of the announcements, whether they dive into the details or not. So the announcement is the news, not necessarily the veracity. And it's the way it is. This general awareness of progress is important for investment and excitement in general, lest the inside baseball stuff get lost in the shuffle. So pointing out to the masses is still important. Like, hey, the thing that we always talk about, yep, we're still talking about it because we're still working on it and there's still things happening and we're advancing the cause and all that. So it keeps it kind of at the front of mind or at the top of the heap of stuff. The inside baseball stuff is important, but not necessarily exciting on its face. Not yet anyway. So wrapping it in some hype can be useful. Sometimes world-changing discoveries or progress toward discoveries is hidden away, perhaps behind veils of secrecy and national security and so on, especially when it comes to physics, for example. So this is kind of the opposite. Like, hey, here's some stuff and here's some other stuff that may or may not actually be completely accurate based on the stuff. So you highlight the real stuff with some a little bit of hand waving, perhaps. Hype gets noticed either way to some degree. So through one's busy day or in a very busy world in which we find ourselves lately, something as consequential as AI can be lost in the shuffle, believe it or not. It's kind of, it's almost literally in the cloud. You don't encounter it every day. It's not making the news with a lot of video and commentary and controversy and so on. It will, and it occasionally does here and there. XAI generating images it should not be generating, for example. But keeping some level of awareness in the public consciousness is not unreasonable a thing to pursue, so that advancing along the Gartner hype curve, there is something, there's often a sense that I thought I heard something about this like a month ago or similar. So there's a kind of the hype and hype cycles are maintaining a certain sort of awareness, even if the masses are generally but only passively aware of the continuing march towards global domination by your AI masters. If hype is a combination of what is at the moment and what could be, consuming hype is a good way to avoid surprise, even if the latter part of the hype goes in another direction on the next hype cycle. So if the what is part of the hype is pretty accurate, ideally it would be accurate without qualification. But if it's, if you look back in time at stovetop or tabletop or whatever it was, fusion, room temperature fusion, oh, it's a new energy source that could happen. The hype was like, we had a non-reproducible experiment, but it seems to be, room temperature fusion in these easy to achieve conditions and so on. And so the hype was like, oh, the future of fusion energy, completely clean, safe, et cetera, et cetera. The base fact, the what is in that circumstance, it turned out to be inaccurate. So it's important to be aware of these things, and it's important to get the attention so that people are generally aware of things that they may or may not be completely knowledgeable about. But a kernel of truth is a good start. What does not work about AI hype? And again, we're using this compiler announcement and its capabilities that are asserted but are not, or alleged perhaps, but are not necessarily as described, as an example of some AI hype happening right now. While hype can certainly be that combination of what is and what could be, if the hype is more what could be and that potential future is built upon an overly optimistic representation of what is, as we might allege in the case with this Anthropic announcement, then the hype ends up being actively misleading to all but the most interested people taking the time to dive in, as the Primeagen did in this case. I don't know if Nate, the other character in this portrayal, if Nate took the time to actually build a Linux kernel and see where it didn't go, or to look at some of the other questions about what was asserted. But I think the announcement was so exciting that we'll just take it as face value. And the Primeagen is a little bit more skeptical, like I said. Both are just normal people, so I'm not like trying to indict them for anything. They have their interests, and they create content around their perspectives, so that they're both useful. They're both worth consuming. I think I'm subscribed to both of them on a YouTube channel somewhere. So if we are generous, illustrating possibilities as accomplishments to highlight the actual accomplishment in this case is still excessive. The compiling the Linux kernel or other well-known projects, which depend on a functional C compiler that is extremely capable, making claims that are not quite accurate and then basing optimism on those is a little bit much. The hype is around something that is not true in this case, or not completely true, not quite as described, and that's not great. Hype as a tool of awareness is one thing, and again, that could be useful just so that people are generally aware that the progress continues and so on. Hyping up minor achievements is one way to just give a sense that there is work still being done, and that's valid. Not every day can be the world changes once again, right? Oh, we made a little bit of incremental progress. We improved something a little bit. We made it a little bit safer, a little bit less safe sometimes. But material decisions are being made in this hype-rich environment in general, so that huge market swings and substantial changes in direct investment, round raises, for example, may result from hype that is perhaps overly optimistic. The market swings are especially likely, and they do happen, if the hype suggests an outlandish lead taken by one of those major competitors, Anthropic, Google, OpenAI. There are some other ones. Totally spacing on, but it's going to come down to like 2 or 3, and then the variety will contract. Maybe there will be some acquisitions. There's obviously stuff going on in other countries, so I'm really just looking at the U.S. companies right now. But generally speaking, there will be a little bit of contraction, most likely. That's my guess. And I mean, that's not an unpopular opinion. And then there will be some more research and other developments and so on. That's the nature of the beast. So the market swings are especially likely and have happened and will happen. Remember when OpenAI launched ChatGPT and Google did not have a competent product or service to counter that? So their stock took a big dive and everybody said, oh, that's it, Google's over. Google search is never going to be valuable again. And it turns out that was not true. So some of this stuff will bear out over time. Hype is not hype if it is not rooted in actual progress or discovery, but in optimistic speculation or outsized representations of what is actually the state of the art, is, I would say, dangerous, at least financially and economically, near term and maybe long term. So if claims are made and hype is believed, certain decisions may be made based on those that will lead down, we'll say, a less optimal path. And then, we should have invested in the other thing. Or, if only that other company would have survived, but for that hype cycle. As public consciousness is steered by hype, true or not so true, there becomes an environment where claims about workforce replacement and other such changes to the status quo become believable. If AI is building the Linux kernel with a tool it wrote itself, why should I even become a software engineer? This can work on the investment side, but also work on the population at large and can lead to casual decision making or maybe even long-term decisions like, should I pursue an education in computer technology, or is AI going to obviate the need for human participation at all? I mean, when I was going into college, I had basically two interest areas. Computer engineering was one of them. That was the one I ended up preferring. If someone had said, don't even bother, these tools are going to obviate the need for you to exist, I might have said, oh, I don't know about this. I tend to be a little bit more cynical. That's probably why I enjoy the Primogen's content and opinions and his perspectives. But I would like to think that I would have looked as I am now at these things and said, I don't know if I buy all this. Your opinion may vary. That's why this show, this whole entire notion, this format exists, so that at some point someone might say, oh, Dan, you are incorrect, and Nate is on to something here. So what can we do about all this? What do we do in the face of these rapid developments and the hype surrounding them? First things first, whether you are a hands-on participant or not, it is useful to find the focused content creators and opinion influencers on the cheerleading enthusiast side and on the skeptic side as well. Like most other things, especially politics, getting the believer and the non-believer angles is essential. You'll often find that on a particular issue, one side will take one view and one side will take the other view, and then on a different issue, they will seem to switch. Yeah, that's how the world works. If you are working with, say, AI yourself, these sources may be more technical, perhaps. They may be like Primogen is fairly technical. Nate is, I think, a little bit less technical, but certainly hands-on from my perception. But who you treat as your sources on either side of these things will vary. But I think it's important to get fans and skeptics, or enthusiasts and skeptics, about topics like this, because there will be such a variation in opinion or perception or expertise and how they apply that expertise to the way they perform an analysis and render an opinion and so on. So these are people that can do some of the work for you by keeping track of these things. It's sometimes in their financial interest to create content and publish it and so on. But they will be able to temper the hype with some counter hype. So again, if you find somebody who's very pro and find somebody who's very anti, or maybe they'll help to center the overall status of the state of affairs, right? Status of the state of affairs is not great grammar. Hopefully you take my meaning. Obviously, becoming familiar to the degree you are interested and able in this part of the development of our modern world. So in other words, if you are interested and you can consume enough of what's going on to get a pretty good impression of what's happening, even if you're not a coder yourself in this case, or whatever the case, but if you can actually become informed from primary sources, from claims made and announcements and so on, and you're not depending entirely on opinion influencers on either side of a particular issue, if you can reach that state in the development of our modern world, it's going to be more and more important. This may be enlisting a trusted friend or colleague to offer some insights, perhaps, if you don't do it yourself, or both, or rolling up the proverbial sleeves, and again, diving in, figuring out what's really going on. What are they really talking about? What is an LLM? How does it really work? Why did they use the entire internet as training model? What does training mean? And some of these things are sort of, I would see someone arguing that this is like learning how to drive a standard transmission vehicle. You may or may not understand exactly how a standard transmission works with gearbox and the differentials and the what do you call it? The synchro gears, synchro mesh, and all that. Those are, but knowing how to shift gears and get out of first gear and so on is a good starting point, in my opinion. Recognizing the difference between actual accomplishment and extraordinary claims in the anthropic hype in this example is important and will continue to be. Possessing enough familiarity to ask the question is a baseline to aspire to. The thing with standard transmissions was always, what if you need to, in an emergency, you have access to a car, but it's a standard transmission. If you want to get to the hospital or get someone to the hospital or go for help or whatever the emergency is, you should be at least able to drive. You may not be a professional race car driver. You're not doing speed shifting, avoiding the use of the clutch completely, but some base competence will come in handy in general, at least in the near term. Finally, use the tools, use the tech. You may not be building a compiler tool chain, but you can use the AI tech that we are hearing more and more about daily, on which so much of our current economy is based, the circular economy, and on which so much of our near future may be based. It's probably safe to say that AI will appear somewhere. It's kind of like the internet, not so much like Web3, right? So there are practical applications already. The question is whether it will be as useful as the internet or if it will be corrupted and misused against people like the internet. Here again, a trusted friend or colleague who is actually hands-on is a good start, but becoming more aware of what is actually functional in this sector of the rapidly evolving tech space is going to matter. So use AI now and then. There are free tools available. There are free tiers of service. And, if you have a Google account, you can probably use the Gemini stuff just to become familiar with what's possible. Why is everything I'm doing with this AI tool always so awesome? Why am I always so amazing? Why is AI so complimentary of me? Well, that's good to know. It's good to explore that a little bit. And then when you read in the news about parasocial relationships that are ending up being unhealthy and sometimes worse, why does that happen? Oh, okay, maybe that's why, et cetera, et cetera. So getting a sense of all this directly is going to matter. And it's going to matter more and more. So when you see a hype article like, oh, we invented a thing and it did a thing and a collection of things did some other things, and we ended up with a compiler tool chain that will obviate the need for humans to do anything with computers ever again, right? Some of that's true and some of it's a little bit much. So it's useful and it behooves you to have a certain level of awareness. So you will at least say, that doesn't smell right. And we'll see what happens. So that's where we are right now. And I will end by saying this is to be continued. There will certainly be a part 2. I don't know if there'll be a part 10, but AI itself is one thing. The hype around it, the claims, the progress, the capabilities, the dangers, these are all things that we all kind of need to keep track of. And there will be hype around all of these things. And so knowing how to consume this, how to interpret it, and how to make decisions around it might be a life skill worth picking up on. My opinion, yours may vary. Ponder. On that note, I will thank you for listening as always, and I will remind you that links to all of my audio programs are available on that buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. On that page, you need not spend any money. You don't have to buy me a coffee. There are some affiliate links and whatnot, but yeah, you can find all of my Quaggling Sand and Let's Innovate for Vegas and Cafe Genius Impresario's audio programs in addition to this one in the various places you may find them. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you so much for listening as always. Take care now.